Hey NAI football fans, Corey Thorpe here with another edition of the NAIF Ball Podcast, powered by AdCraft USA, your custom apparel, merch, and uniform experts. Our friends at AdCraft have been with us for many years now. They've run web stores for us multiple times. These guys are NAI fans and family who are experts in the apparel and merchandise world. AdCraft allows you to take the hassle out of ordering. Let their knowledgeable design and customer service staff handle everything from hosting the store online, shipping the product, and helping your customers so you can get back to the game. Find them online at adcraftusa.com. All right, NAI football fans, this is Corey Thorpe back with Heart Preview 2 of 2, two in the same week. How about that, Matt?
It's a joy. I love the Heart Conference. It is always a
It's a
fun
good
one to talk
conference.
about, I feel like.
It
Yeah.
it is it is such a good conference, and look, there are not a ton of commissioners I know by name. Nick Rule is doing an absolutely killer job in the Heart, and looking forward to working with them more in the future. But this is a side of the conference. You know, we talked about Grandview a couple days ago, where it's kind of Grandview in the field. This is a lot more fun in terms of who's gonna get it. There's a little more intrigue within those top three squads. So let's not tease it anymore. Let's get to the getting. And well, look,
Who?
William Woods. You know,
Who?
one out of every three people are
Who?
masquerading as owls. I think it's Matt.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, I just get really excited about the owls.
Hey, look, man. There's nothing like a good owl as a mascot. You have your first year. You have your first win. Unfortunately, you're still searching for your first conference win, but you've also got to replace a head coach, and they do that. Sam Camp gets promoted from their offensive coordinator position to their head coaching spot. And, I mean, you have to start somewhere, right?
Yep.
And, you know, unfortunately, the only player that you had on your all conference list went elsewhere last year. That's going to be a big loss. That was almost 1,000-yard receiver there in Troy Oliver. But the fact is that you're a second year squad. You literally have almost everyone coming back. I mean, this is the groundwork for years to come. It's not like this doesn't count, but in terms of the expectations, this is sort of what we expect.
Yeah. And I don't think it's any discredit to anybody. Like, it's just, like you said, a second year program. And even then, like, getting your first win in your first season, like, not everybody does that. There are a lot of things in place. Like, you had an all conference guy make the first or second team last year in your first season. You had production. You have guys that know what they're doing. You're in a pretty good spot to probably win a few games this year. And I think that's pretty good. So,
Yep. So Gabe Sari is going to be your starting quarterback. Jalen Proctor at running back. You return all your D linemen, headlined by an NAI all name guy in Sovereign Morton. That's a
yeah,
strong
that's
name.
that's a good one. Yep.
Darius Butler headlines your linebacker core, and Carter Holloway in your defensive backfield there. I mean, look, I believe in what William Woods is doing. Um, they are in a strong spot in terms of their backing from their administration. Um, so I expect some growth here. Next up, Central Methodist, team that's put some guys into the NFL over the last 10 years, but not a great season from them last year. 1-10, 1-5.
Yeah, it's definitely been a bit of a fall from grace for this team, especially with how we were talking about them a couple of years ago. and being in the top 25 and being a team that was beating other good teams. And now you're kind of starting back from ground zero. The good news is that you do bring back a lot of your offense, and being able to bring back that side of the ball that may have struggled last year. You may have struggled, but you're still a year better for it. Obviously, DeJuan Lomax being your main guy there in the backfield that you bring back. Um, Something to build off of there.
Yeah, and you do bring back your a majority of your quarterback room, headlined by Alvaro Ortega Morales. Um, but if you're returning a majority of your quarterback room, that means that you probably lost one big guy, and you're going to have to fill in those shoes. That's gonna be a toughie. You also return a minority of your wide receivers, headlined by Kyle Dixon. That's hard. I mean, new quarterbacks,
Mm-hmm.
new receivers, and an offense that was 94th in the nation last year. You had a worse offense than a first year squad. Um, that's not ideal.
Mm-hmm.
Also on defense, you've got uh, a lot of stuff to replace on your D line and your linebacker core. It might be tough again for Central Methodist. Dave Brown entering his third season. He's got to he's got to figure out a way to right the ship and get back up to where Central Methodist has been in years past. Next up is one of the historically best teams in the NAIA. That's going to be Moval. Missouri Valley, the Vikings, up 5 from last year. I remember saying last year at this time, we didn't really know who Missouri Valley was going to be. We didn't know if Moval was going to be good, bad, indifferent. They're able to kind of hold serve and to kind of pull it together a little bit. And I think this year they might be wanting to take a step forward.
Yeah, and especially after bringing in some D1 experience at your head coaching position, LeQuinton Black, obviously the old safety coach for UNI, hopping on over for the Vikings. And I think he has a lot to work with, especially on the offensive side of the ball. You bring back an all conference lineman in Luke Clanton. And also, not to mention, like most of your quarterbacks are coming back. You have a good chunk of your running back room coming back. And like we mentioned, guys like Malik Brown in the wide receiver core are coming back as well.
I'll also know that Tavian Campbell, although he's noted here as a kick returner, that's what he was all conference in. He lines up as a running back. That's 2 kick return touchdowns. I mean, is there some element of blocking the kick returns? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, you've got to be somewhat shifty. And one is okay. All right, I see you. But two means that you actually this was not a fluke.
It's
So
not a one off. Yeah.
right, exactly. What you're going to have to figure out though is your defense. Ethan Towers, Kobe Wyndham, both heading off there. Ethan Towers was good for 14 tackles for loss and 8 sacks last year. A forced fumble and an interception for Wyndham, and that's going to be difficult because you do lose half of your defense, and you return like no linebackers, like zero zippo, none. We had no one that was not a senior until we got to a guy with 2 tackles. We usually cut off at 10. Lance Nauer with 2 tackles is kind of the linebacker of record there, and so that's kind of scary because your linebacker core are the ones who kind of call the shots on your defense.
It's true. But, bringing in some different experience, maybe some different guys with him. We'll be curious to see how Missouri Valley does. I'll have something of note for them later, actually. So,
Moving on, same state, different way of going there. We go from Vikings to Spartans. Missouri Baptist had a big jump last year, up 19 overall, headlined by a move in their offense. and actually their defense too, both went up in the teens. 16 spots on offense, 17 spots on defense. Jason Buryanek entering his 12th season, and I got to tell you, of all the coaches in the league, Buryanek is one of, a few guys that people tell me that's one to keep an eye on. And so this Missouri Baptist team has been flailing, was in the mid states, comes over to the Heart. I think this year, after a season in the Heart, they're going to kind of get their bearings about them here, because this was a team that played extremely well last season for it being their first year in the Heart.
Yeah, and Missouri Baptist has always been kind of a scrappier team, right? They're not always at the top of the top, but they're going to give teams a good fight. And obviously, having a winning record and going 3-3 in your first year in the South is really not that bad. And you bring back a lot of the guys on the defense that had production for you. Um, and also, like the guys that you do have leaving are mostly on your offense, but you bring back a lot of the key players.
Yeah, now what you're going to have to get around are a couple of D linemen and a DB. Javanoy Saints, Raquan Ramsey, Rondell Messer. Ramsey is a multi-time all-conference guy. Even in the MSFA, he was making all-conference. That's a big loss on your D line. 17 and a half tackles for a loss, 8 sacks. Saints had 17 and a half tackles for a loss himself on that D line. 35 tackles for a loss between those two D linemen. You're going to have to figure that one out. You do have a 1,000-yard running back coming back in Lionel Banks. That is huge as you bring back as well a all-conference first-teamer junior in Cale Bunner on your offensive line. But as you were saying, Matt, you do bring back a majority of that defense and about half of that offense. Really, on offense, what's killer there is the fact that your most seasoned quarterback had 9 attempts last year.
Yeah, not necessarily ideal, but they're always such a strong team, like I had mentioned, and they fight well. Wouldn't be surprised if Missouri Baptist is in the mix.
And we will keep going here with the Heart South after these messages from our friends at AdCraft.
So you want to create and sell custom merch for your team or business. That's exciting, but where do you begin? How much inventory should you order? How do you distribute orders? AdCraft has your answers. Streamline the way you offer custom merch by utilizing our risk-free web store service. We ship directly to each customer, and we have the fastest turnaround in the game. Raise funds for your team or get merch to your employees and patrons. Contact AdCraft today, and let's bring your merch to life.
And they are so good at doing that. We've used them before on multiple occasions to get stuff out to y'all. They handle the customer service. They handle everything for you so that you can keep your head in the game. I highly recommend working with them. Try them for a web store. See what happens. They produce great quality material, wearing some tonight. And they do a great job, and they are NAI born and bred. So, Matt, we usually go halvesies in between there, but it feels like we have all of a sudden gone from the midfield, and all of a sudden we go to the front of the pack almost immediately with this kind of
Mhm.
three-way tangle at the top, and it starts off with Baker. Baker, who had a really good year last year, really got back to where they want to be. 9-2, 5-1, 15th overall in SP plus, with a good offense, a good defense. This is a team that I don't know. They might take a step back this year, but a half a step back from this team is still going to be a darn good squad.
Yeah, obviously you're kind of most worried about that defense that was really productive for you last season. You lose a lot of guys, especially your DB room. You don't have much of a returning secondary, which is going to be a big issue on top of the fact that you lose 2 linebackers and a D lineman and Brian Lane. You do have Zach Kramer coming back, which will definitely serve you well as a first team all conference guy, but he's going to have to help pull together the pieces of that defense with what's left. So it'll be interesting to see how they go about that.
And the scary thing about this is that this was a division in which Truman Yulesgard was not an all-conference pick. Truman Yulesgard is a darn good quarterback.
Very, very good football player. Yes.
I and this just speaks to the level of quarterback play in this division, that he's going to be third. He's not a distant third, but he's third.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Matt, you hit the nail on the head. Returning a minority defense because of that DB room. You'll lose Metcalf, McCallum, and Lewis. Those are absolutely massive. That is 8 interceptions and 3 forced fumbles from last season. That's a lot of turnovers. That's a lot of extra turns at bat for an offense that was really good. That wins you football games. And then we go from Baker to their hated rival, Benedictine. And I got to tell you, I don't know how Benedictine isn't the last team in this slideshow, because this was a semifinal team last
It's
year.
ridiculous, right?
Right. Really what let them down at times was their defense. I mean, it's a good thing they had a really good offense, because their defense was steady giving up 5 2/5 yards per play.
Yeah. The big thing for me of note with Benedictine is that Jackson Dooley, you talk about a conference of top tier quarterbacks to where Truman Yulesgard is not on your all conference list. Jackson Dooley is a guy that's like, okay, like he's coming back. He was the top quarterback in a stacked quarterback conference. Um, and he brings back so many weapons with him. You look at the list there, 4 O linemen, 3 of which were first team all conference last year.
It's ridiculous.
That is ridiculous.
It is downright ridiculous. I mean, I don't know that I've ever seen that. It's a little silly.
Yeah.
And to be fair, the list of those who are leaving isn't as long as it could be. Yeah, you're losing Jacob Gathright, who's a 1,300 plus yard wide receiver. Jay Sean Todd, who is first team all conference in 3 different areas. And a little bit here and there in basically your whole special teams unit with Cullen Bruner, Harry Balke, and Zach Philippi. But you bring back a whole lot, especially of guys that didn't quite make the cut. Guys like Xavier Ugorji, who at running back was hurt half the season and still was great down the stretch. Kevin Harris at your D line, Isaiah Haston at your DB position, and a guy who was a great wide receiver for you last year, who would have been an all conference on pretty much any other team, Joseph Lagafuina.
Mm-hmm.
This
Absolutely.
is stacked, and if they can take their defense and move from half and fill in those pieces with dudes, I mean, the sky's the limit for this Benedictine team. So who's going to be better? And that's going to be Mid-America and Nazarene, who had an absolutely phenomenal year, up 27 spots in SP+, up 19 on offense, up 23 on defense, and whose fight song drives me absolutely up the wall crazy, because it's Florida State's fight song with words that are changed, and it's weird. It's really strange. I had to go look it up because I thought I was going crazy when I heard their fight song. I thought I was losing it.
Coach Cordova might be losing it too.
Yeah.
As a first year head coach after a promotion, which congrats, coach. Um, the offense that is usually very high powered for this Mid American Nazarene team, you lose a lot of key pieces from last year's squad. Adrian Parsons, a guy to note. Cameron Finley's also on that list. EJ Rogers, Miles Himes. There's there's a lot of pieces for that offense, especially Parsons,
Yeah.
who was really the churning motor of the whole thing. You're gonna
Yeah.
have to figure out a lot of spots there.
Yeah, and I don't look. The reason that you've got Ivan Cordova in there is is Paul Hansen went to Southwest Baptist. I am there are so many of these guys where I'm not going to blame them at all. You jump to a D2 school, you do really good work. You take a Mid America team from mid to bad, and you make them a front runner in the heart. You go and you leverage that to a better situation for yourself and your family. That's no problem. And honestly, it's probably the perfect time to do it because you lose your all-world quarterback along with a couple of running backs who that's 1,700 yards right there. Another 1,200 yards worth of wide receivers. That's a lot of that's a lot of stuff to bring back.
Yeah,
That's crazy. Now, granted, you do have Justin Miller, first teamer O lineman, John Brown, first teamer linebacker, but that is this is a minority majority. Actually, sorry, I reduced that. It's now few on offense and a majority of defense after we noticed that Sean Cherry was no longer on the squad, had transferred out. This is if Mid America comes in like tied third this year, I'm going to be very, very impressed, to be very honest. With all of this leaving and a first year head coach, this is a tough road to hoe.
definitely. And especially a team that's so known for its offense, you are now gonna have to flip that completely. You're gonna have to lean on your defense. That's where your experience is. You have pretty much an entire linebacker core coming back, which definitely works in your favor. But a lot of moving parts, a lot of new faces in different places. Um, like you said, it's going to be an uphill battle for them the entire season, I think. Um, but that's not to say there's not talent. I think this
Yeah.
is a well coached enough team. This like the floor was set a lot higher for this program than it had been in years past. Um, I think they'll be in an okay spot. I think they'll win a good chunk of their games. Um, but I don't that upper tier. I don't know. It's hard to sell me on that for them.
And the fact is that their administration is also one that's very much investing in them. They will open a on-campus stadium this year, so they're going to have new digs
It's awesome.
there. They are invested in this.
Hmm.
It's just going to be it's going to be an uphill climb. So, what does that mean for our picks? Honestly, I think the front runner in this is pretty clear. Unlike most other seasons where it's not been very clear, this one I think it's pretty clear. That's Benedictine. They return a absolute crap ton on both sides of the football, and the other two, just because they're young doesn't mean they're not talented, but they may not be able to keep up with what Benedictine has to offer. Matt, who you got winning?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as you. Benedictine is the clear cut. I think Jackson Dooley. I talked about Michael Palandri earlier in these previews. We talked about Morningside and their guys. Jackson Dooley is going to be right up there for Player of the Year this year. I think that he's just absolutely phenomenal. And I have no reason to believe like the core of their offense doesn't just steamroll through most of their competition during the regular season.
The fact that my guy has 4 all-conference linemen coming back,
I mean,
he's not going to get sacked.
yeah, it's ridiculous.
All right, so you got the Ravens running away with it. Who's your dark horse?
Yeah. So also, I should note I do feel bad that I have Liston behind me here, and I picked Benedictine to win. That feels kind of like a kick in the pants. So I apologize, Baker fans, on that one. But I think for my dark horse, I mentioned with Missouri Valley earlier. They're my dark horse pick here, and I think it's interesting to note that with LaQuinton Black, Coach Black coming in, he's a guy who has experience at D2, D1 as a GA, was leading Hutchinson before this. Also was at a school we talked about not that long ago, Central Methodist, from 2017 to 2020. Now, granted, they were Division two still, I believe, at that time. Um, if my brain remembers correctly, it might not. It doesn't always. Um, but took that secondary to higher heights than they had seen before. Has a proven track record of developing defensive guys on a defensive unit that you return a decent amount of guys on, but still, like there are holes to fill on that side. He's a proven developer on that side of the ball, and to match it, your offense is going to be the strong point of this team. Um, why am I not one to believe that he can get it done, especially after a good stint at UNI?
Yeah, I mean, I'll credit you on that one. CMU had a couple of guys, especially in the secondary, that
Mm-hmm.
got not just training camp invites, but got signed by NFL squads.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the guy can tell a top tier talent. I, however, have to go with Mobap. I think they've got a lot of room to grow, and I think they can do it with that defense coming back. And you've got a running back that you can rely on in Lionel Banks, a wide receiver core that retains most of its receivers. And I think you're going to be able to get a new quarterback in more easily in that kind of situation than you would in some others. I really feel good about where Mobap is going, and I have a lot of trust in Jason Briannick to um, to get that going. This was actually your dark horse pick from last year. I just think you're a year off.
Yeah, might have been. And also, I do need to fact check myself with the Division two thing. I was wrong. I don't know why I said that. They've been in the heart for like a minute with Central Methodist. So uh, just had to fact check myself there. But yeah, I think Missouri Baptist and Missouri Valley are both going to be in really good positions. Like that game is probably like going to determine who's in that upper tier this year.
Yep.
So kind of excited to see how that goes.
So let's see. With 3 really good squads, yeah, you're pretty good on
Well
your
played.
average SP plus.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just off the frontier, which that's fantastic. However, due to the fact that you've got 2 teams also in and around the 90s,
Who?
exactly, your standard deviation is not great. 32.634, that falls below the GPAC. And I think this is the first one where we can definitely point to and say this is not completely attributable to the size of your conference or division. Um,
Totally.
this one's definitely explainable. So where do you slot in? Right between the GPAC and the North. We mentioned a couple days ago that there was a very thin margin by a tenth between the GPAC and the Heart. Well, that still exists. The Heart South just slots in there 100th of a point in between, or 500ths of a point in between. And Frontier still reigns supreme with the 2.6. I'm really interested to see what the KCAC and the Mid-South are going to bring, because I do think the Mid-South could make the Frontier's number change a little bit. I don't know the Mid-South is going to win outright this year and defend their title, but I do think that the Frontier will budge a little bit. But right now, the Frontier's reigning supreme. So join us next week for another edition of the NAIF Ball Podcast. But before we go, we got to talk about the guys that keep us going, and that's our patrons. Patreon.com/NAIFball is where you can find it, and we appreciate everyone who has signed up. It means a lot. The fact that there are people who are willing to give money to listen to us jabber is pretty insane and pretty incredible, and we are so thankful. And those patrons are DSU Cone, Bob Boone, Roger Meyer, Jeremy Vaubel, Fred Christensen, Ace Wellen, Marty Siebold, Nick Ryan, Kyle Gregory, Tyler Pierce, Justin Hoffman, Steve Speakman, Brian Shade, Julian Shager, Nate Soapbeer, Stephen Cutler, Julie Loudon, Nathan Moore. You're going to have to apologize to Nate for the fact that you have a Baker background. Ryan, Jason Crawford, Charles A. Flowers, Todd Nick, Sean Chamberlain, Zach Lance, Casey Willison, Carol C. Suggs, Chris, Derek Lowers, Jason Garnon, USF Sucks, Ian Brookshire, Joey Ruckle, Coca Nicholas, Tim Burrow, and MidwestSports.net. We are about a third of the way through this, and it's weird because I feel like everyone has gotten a little worse. So I'm really interested to see what the middle third of this has. I feel really good with the KCAC coming up. The KCAC as a whole, as a conference, used to be just awful, but they've improved so much over the last 7 years as a conference and have done a whole lot of work to increase their standing in the NAI that I'm interested to see what happens there.
Agreed. It'll be fun down the stretch, but football's going to be here before we know it. It'll creep up on us.
I
Always
am
does.
so looking forward to the getting to the real getting. So until then, we will see y'all on the Twitter feed.